Hi, you're coming live to the Get Busy Livin podcast. I'm Dr. Scott from Six Sense Acupuncture and also the Healthy Habits Club. And we have a wonderful guest tonight on the Get Busy Livin podcast. And that is the wonderful, I'd like to say, the wonderful, fantastic Steve Wanmer. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Stephen, for joining us. I know how busy you are and how precious your time is. So much appreciated that you came on tonight.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Well, that's good to see. At least you got a smile.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Stephen, we'll get into what you do and what you get up to. But first of all, I'd like to find out, and the audience would like to find out, what gets you out of bed every morning?
Okay, what gets me out of bed in every morning is because I'm driven to help business people succeed. I'm frustrated by so many businesses where the business owner is not making the money that they should and is working way too many hours. And it's the most exciting thing to me to see the transformation that can happen with some good coaching.
Totally agree. That's basically you like to help the community, but more importantly, the business community.
Yeah.
With your knowledge. That's what you're trying to say, and that's
Yeah.
fantastic. There should be more of that, Stephen. There should be more of that. So, now that you mentioned that you're with the Action Coach and that you're a business coach, tell us, how did you get into action coaching and business coaching?
That's an interesting story because I had never heard about business coaching. This all happened 25 years ago, and I'd had a quite successful career in the corporate world and also in not-for-profit type operations. And I was looking for where could I make an impact. And I just finished up an assignment that I'd been working on for about 3 years for a not-for-profit organisation. And I saw an advertisement for the ideal white collar franchise. And I thought, that's very interesting. I don't know that I could name any white collar franchises. I mean, we all know about McDonald's and those sort of franchises and Jim's Mowing, but I wasn't attracted to anything like that. So I inquired, and that's where I first spoke with Action Coach and their Brisbane office. And they were in the process of beginning to franchise their coaching operation. And I quickly realised that the opportunity was to contribute to businesses and thereby extend that improvement that you get in a business to the community. So healthy businesses and profitable businesses is one of the cornerstones of a prosperous society, a prosperous community. So I particularly was struck by their vision, which has remained the same for all of these years, and they're on about, and what I'm on about, creating world abundance through business re-education. So in a nutshell, that's how I got connected with Action and got into business coaching.
So it was a bit by accident, really, wasn't it?
It was, well, yes, a bit of happenstance, I suppose. It was, I was looking for something where I could help people and make an impact in a positive way. And yeah, there it was.
So let's back it up a little bit. Let's go back before you became an action coach and doing what you're doing now. So you said that you're from the you came from a positive position within the corporate world, and tell us a bit about that. So you'd obviously done it for a while prior to becoming an action coach.
Yes, yes. I'd had a pretty varied career prior to Action Coach. Initially in the insurance industry, general insurance, particularly in claims management, and spent quite a few years in that field. And from there into, I think the first was into the book trade, and worked for a publishing company as business development manager. And then from there into the financial world, and was a business development manager for a charitable investment fund. And that's really what I was doing, and had just completed an assignment in that area, and was looking for what to do next. And that's probably all the more fascinating because I'm an introvert by nature, and I had always said that I never want to sell anything to anybody. I don't really like talking to people, so I'm happy to work in an office.
You would never know.
But you wouldn't now. But I think God had other plans for me. My destiny lay elsewhere, and so it was while I was working in the insurance industry that I was offered the opportunity to move into the sales area. And so for the last bit over 2 years in the insurance game, I was selling insurance. And like anybody else who has been sort of unexpectedly finds themselves in a sales situation, my first couple of sales experiences were really quite distressing.
I'm sure they were.
And yes, I had to overcome a lot of my inhibitions and hang-ups and whatever. But that seemed to happen quicker than I thought it could. And so, yeah, I realised what a privilege it is to be in a sales situation, helping people professionally and with integrity, helping people to obtain what they need. That's really my version of sales.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. Yeah, slowly learning, Stephen, from the best, which is Stephen, and yeah, that's right. And we talked about this the other day, how children sell to us every day.
Yes,
They're,
yes.
they don't care about the outcome. They're
Yeah.
relentless.
Yeah,
And
very few fathers can resist what their daughters are trying to sell them or manipulate them into doing.
yes, very true.
Mm.
So yeah, so okay, uh, and you managed a large company as well, didn't you? You were in charge of a lot of people at one stage.
Well, I've never been managing a huge operation. Probably my most significant learnings about management really came when I was business development manager for the first of those charitable investment funds, where I had to build a team in the sales and marketing department, and massive learnings around that. Some of it from courses and studies and books and so on, but got a lot more learnings from just having to learn how to recruit people properly, get the right people onto the team. I had an absolutely amazing team in that role, and had to learn how to. It was predominantly women that I employed in that organisation, and some of my male friends used to say to me, "I don't know how you can, deal with those women. I don't know how you can help them to work together as effectively as they obviously do." And so, yeah, I think it's my belief really that the most long-lasting things that we learn, our learning experiences that have the greatest impact, come in the real world, not in a classroom or in a seminar.
Yes, true. Very true. In practice, this is the problem with school, is that they teach us to not make mistakes. But I'm of the
Mm,
opposite opinion.
mm,
If you, the best lessons I've ever learned are basically mistakes I've done practically,
mm, mm.
because you don't forget them. Because if it
No,
impacts
that's right.
because if it impacts not only your life or someone else's life, then yeah, that you really do remember those ones, those mistakes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Um, so that yeah, okay. So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now. So you've been doing it for 25 years. So tell us some interesting stories about how you've helped business owners.
Wow, that's a very good question, and you know, it's a bit of a challenge to know which stories to tell, but there's been so many. I quickly discovered that what I thought was the case is actually true. One of my very early clients was an earth moving business here in Brisbane, and husband and wife running the business with a couple of ladies in the office. Quite a profitable business, and had been going for about 17 or 18 years. And I always do a fairly in-depth goal setting exercise with clients before we begin the coaching. Obviously, we need to we need to look at their personal goals as well as business goals, because they've got to be working together, and quite often they're not. The business is sort of moving in one direction, and the way they really want to go personally is another direction. And the thing that I quickly learnt in that goal setting exercise was the wife of the husband said to me, I only have one goal, Steve. And I'd been trained as a coach that you've got to get a few goals. But I said, so what's your one goal? She said, with your coaching, can you coach us so that we can have a month's holiday away from the business, out of touch from the business in 12 months' time? And I said, yes, I can. And I immediately had a bit of a panic attack and thought, I wonder if I can really achieve that. But she went on to tell me that they had not had a holiday longer than a 4-day weekend, an Easter weekend, in 18 years.
Wow.
And she just couldn't take it any longer. She desperately wanted to be able to get away from the business for at least a month. So what happened was that they were very coachable, and the degree to which a person is coachable is the main factor in determining how successful the coaching is. And they were very coachable, and they made a lot of change in the business. They systemized the whole operation. They really did a lot of work building team, because they had about, 14 or 15 guys driving trucks and bobcats all over Brisbane and that sort of thing. And so they did a lot of work around team. And towards the end of the 12 months, they booked a holiday. She wanted to travel through the Holy Land. And they'd made the bookings, but then something happened over there. I don't know, it wasn't Hamas in those days, but some event happened there that made it unwise to travel there. So they changed plans and went to China for a month's holiday. We had put a general manager in the business to look after the business while they were gone. And they came back, and on the first morning they went into the office and said to the manager, okay, where's all the problems we've got to solve? The manager looked at them and said, no problems. We've sorted everything out. Everybody's happy. There's money in the bank. Why don't you go away for another holiday? So that's a good example of what the benefit of coaching is. There's plenty of others. Coaching, really, successful coaching is not just the change in the business, it's the change that needs to happen in the thinking of the business owner. And they were quite willing to change their beliefs and their mindsets about who you need to be the owner of a business like that earth-moving business. I never thought I'd coach a farmer, but I was referred to a farmer who had just bought a second farm, and his whole bookkeeping was way out of date because he was so busy with the farming that he didn't get the books done. And so for most of the coaching, we didn't know what his financial position was. But I managed to get him away from the farm work to the degree that he and the way we did that was he employed a farm manager, and who was an ideal, well-qualified and experienced person to be able to take on that role. And that freed up his time a lot. And so he went through a major change in his beliefs. I said to him, John, I'm not going to teach you how to grow your crops and how to, what time to fertilise them and what pesticides to use and all that sort of thing. I said, that's not what I'm about, but you are actually a business owner and you think you're only a farmer. So I managed to get him to think more like a business owner would be thinking. And the upshot of that was that he went from making a profit of $250,000 a year, which he was quite happy with. He and his wife are quite happy with that level of financial security. And the year that I coached him, he ended up making $1.5 million. Wow. And that came about because he had changed his thinking about who he is and taken action, because one of the interesting little formulas or principles that we use is a little equation that is, and it simply is be multiplied by do equals have. Yes. So the have is the goals. You have to set goals and you have to make those goals attractive enough that you're willing to commit yourself to achieving them. And working out what you need to do is relatively easy. By comparison, that's the easy part. But the most interesting and challenging part is, who do I need to be so that I'll be able to do those things? And so about 80% of my coaching is helping the business owner to change a lot of their beliefs and to understand that they really, when they decided to go out on their own, they were actually changing their identity without realising it.
Yeah, okay. So tell us a bit more about that. When you mean their identity, do you mean their position within the business or their actual persona within the public? Or
yeah, it's all of those things. The story that illustrates that really well is, and I never ended up coaching this guy, but he was a builder up on the Sunshine Coast, and he was building about 10 or 12 homes a year, and he had a profitable business, but he was really uncoachable. And I'd had about 3 meetings with him, I think, before we parted company. And over again, he would comment to me, but Steve, I'm just a chippy. But Steve, I'm just a chippy. It was like a cracked record. I'd raise something with him and he'd say, but I'm just a chippy, but I'm just a chippy. And just if that is your whole belief about yourself, if that's who you see yourself as, I'm just a chippy, then you're not going to be able to build more than 10 houses a year. In fact, you're doing pretty well to get to that level.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's very difficult, and it doesn't matter whether we're a lawyer or any other profession or a trade or whatever we are. we like to refer to ourselves by what we do, not by what it is that we're building. So it's going that chippy, for example, could have decided that he was going to he was going to submit to going through a process of changing his thinking about himself, so that he would go from I'm just a chippy to I'm an entrepreneur currently building a home building business. Even to get to I'm a business owner. I'm currently growing a home building company.
Yeah.
So it's the change of identity that's the key, really, for business owners to progress in their business.
So that you're getting pretty deep there. But
I am. That means you've got to go pretty deep, Scott. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. It's the same with my job. It's no different. So tell us, what is the main problem that you see most with businesses? What's normally the main problem that you see within businesses?
In a nutshell, it's the lack of business education. Most people who go into business have not read a business book, even.
Yes.
And they have observed they're working for somebody, and they look at that person and they think, this guy's an idiot. This guy or girl is an idiot. I reckon I could do better than them. Look at all the things they're doing wrong. And so they one day they wake up and they've had an entrepreneurial seizure during the night, and they say, I'm going to go out on my own.
Yeah.
And
true.
so that's what they do. If they're a tradie, they buy themselves an ex-Telstra van or something and get it sign written and put their tools in it and advertise on Facebook. And well, the first rule is I've got to get some business, so I know what I'll do. I'll charge less than, because my boss was absolutely ripping people off. So, I'll just charge about $10 or $20 an hour less than the boss, and I'm bound to succeed. And so I catch up with that guy, or he contacts me 5 years later when he's working 80 hours a week. His wife's pregnant with their third or fourth child. She hardly ever sees him because he's working so many hours. And I say, so how much money are you making? What income did you have last year? Oh, well, it was less than I was getting from my boss. So lack of knowledge is we pay. It's really quite interesting that the cost of a lack of knowledge is huge, immeasurable in a lot of cases. Yeah.
But at least they've had the gumption to try and get out of the
that's right,
the treadmill, the hamster wheel.
Yes, that's it.
So
but they don't know what the next step is, other than the obvious things. And the first step really would be, I better read a business book and find out what the basics of business is.
Yes.
Because the basics of business is the same. That's the other thing, Scott. The fundamental rules of the game of business are the same. It doesn't matter whether you're a brain surgeon or whatever, a plumber, you can be any kind of business, but the fundamentals of business are the same. You need to decide who you want to have as clients. So you create an avatar of the type of people that you want to have as clients. Then you have to work out what the message is that you want to convey to them, because you need to buy your clients as cheaply as possible. One of the things that most businesses don't measure is how much has it cost me to get this client. So you buy your clients as cheaply as possible, and you need to keep them as clients for as long as possible. And
Yeah.
that's the other equation that we use. I told you about the be multiplied by do equals have, and that's incorporating what you need to do and joining it with who you need to be. But the other one that's very relevant for every business on the planet is what we call the 5 ways. And you need to measure the number of leads you generate, number of inquiries, in other words. You multiply that by the percentage of those that are actually converting into becoming clients, and that gives you your number of customers. And then from the number of customers, you multiply that by the average value of each purchase that the clients make, and multiply that again by the number of times in a year that your average client buys from you, and that gives you your revenue for the business in dollars. You multiply that by the percent of profit margin that you make, and that gives you the profit. So knowing just that formula and being able to track those numbers in a business is the key to being able to improve things, because the other little axiom that most people have probably heard is you can't manage what you don't measure. If you want to manage something, you have to measure it.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, I understand that. So you've gone into a few different avenues there. So, yeah, the one thing I have learned from you is the 80-20 rule. So that's what you touched on before about your clients. 20% of your clients create 80% of your business
revenue. Yes.
Okay. And the other 80% create 20% of your revenue, and that's what you're talking about. You want to try and gain that relationship with your 20%.
Yeah.
Then they're a long-term client.
Get more of those type of people, because it's the other 80% that cause you all your problems.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes. And that takes up so much of your time that it inhibits you being able to look after the 20% better.
Yes. Yep. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about because you said that setting goals is very important because well, it makes sense because I mean in the team sports, if there's no goalposts, then there's nothing to aim for. So it's the same in business. So tell us about how you would try to get a business owner to set their goals.
That's also a very good question. I think the best starting point is to do a review of what you've achieved in the last 12 months. And what that will do is that helps to get your brain focused on what you have achieved. And from there, you can more easily imagine the future that you really want to have. Again, there's a kind of a formula that we use there as well, and we call it IVVM. Idealize. You start off by idealizing, dreaming. You've got a dream. If you don't have a dream when you start in business, then you're going to live a nightmare. That's pretty much the truth. And so start with a dream, and dream about your ideal life, and your business is a part of your ideal life, not the other way around. The business is the vehicle that is going to either assist you to achieve your personal goals, or it's going to prevent you. And it'll do one of those things. If it's not helping you, then it's going to prevent you. So I've actually coached a few people that decided they had the realization that this business I'm in, Steve, this is the wrong business. I'm not going to be able to achieve my personal goals, my life goals, if I keep working this business, am I? And that's an interesting discovery. So first of all, you idealize, then you visualize, you create a montage, you collect pictures and words that describe that ideal picture that you've envisaged, and you create a montage or a scrapbook that you can look at, preferably on a daily basis. And you can, as you look at it, you put yourself in those pictures. So you're thinking, just imagine what it's going to be like when I'm driving that dream car and living in that dream house and whatever else you've got on your dream board. So that's the visualization part of it. Now, the next one is the next V, and that's verbalize. You have to talk about your future. And I just basically role played that a bit. I'm just so excited now that I'm driving this vehicle or whatever, and put yourself in the picture. But the other part of verbalize is to think of words that describe somebody that you know that is already in that place where you want to get to. So that's the I am statements as well. So I am a successful business owner. I am an accomplished salesperson. Things like that. And you create another page with those I am statements on as well. And again, you look at that and you read them out to yourself every day. So what are we up to? Idealize, visualize, verbalize, and the M is materialize. Because if you follow those first three in the way I've described, then those visions, that ideal future, will start to materialize. I've just coached a whole lot of clients today, and a couple of them have had that experience. They walked into the coaching session and said, I can't believe the last month, Steve. I was out of the office because we moved house, my husband and I. We were out of the office. I was out of the office all for weeks. And when I went back to the office, the team looked at me and said, why don't you go away again? Things and so other things that materialize is dream cars, dream properties, dream houses. I've had all sorts of examples of that, and I guess I'd have to say that a lot of those things would not have happened had those people not applied these principles that I'm expressing here.
Yes, I understand you. So yeah, you're talking about affirmations. That's what you're talking about.
That's right. Yeah. See,
So
we're telling ourselves things all the time, and a lot of our self-talk is negative. And so it's important that you can't just stop the negative self-talk. You've got to create positive self-talk to replace it.
So that you're trying to fill your mind with positive thoughts, but also what is going to happen, manifest what is going to happen. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a part of what you're helping people with the healthy habits and healthy habits, but healthy thinking is a key part of that. Yeah.
Okay, and now that we created the goal and we got the affirmations happening in our head, do you see a lot of issues with marketing and sales with businesses?
Yes, that's very common, of course, because if you haven't understood the fundamentals of marketing, you can spend an awful lot of money for very little result. Yes. It's interesting, though, that the other factor, and I don't know that too many people are really present to this, that as you structure your business better, as you get the business working better, you generally attract better clients. I remember my kitchen manufacturing client, and when I started with him, his whole business was in chaos, really. He had a lot of the wrong people employed. We had to get rid of a whole lot of people and get better people. And I remember one coaching session, he said to me, "Steve, we haven't had a client from hell for weeks now." He said, "In fact, I can't remember the last client from hell that we had." I said, "That's interesting. Why do you think that is?" And he thought for a moment and he said, "Well, we're way better organised in the business. Do you think that would have been the reason?" I said, "Well, I can't think of a better one, because we hadn't actually done any marketing campaign or done any different marketing to what he was already doing." So that is a lot of my clients' successes have come in those sort of ways. It's like if you get organised, I think you just by being organised, you go a long way to attracting the right people.
Very true. And systemizing your marketing sales process, yeah?
Yeah, well, systemizing every element of the business, and marketing is a part of that as well. Yeah.
So then they can go on the holidays and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Then you can just get someone else to do it.
Yeah.
But then that comes back to why they were getting out of the business in the first place. So because they were the hamster.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, you see, when the hamster's stuck in the hamster wheel, that's it. That's their whole world. That was another funny story. I met with two brothers that had just taken over running their father's printing business, and the younger brother was like the business manager, and the older brother was in the printery all the time. He was running the production side of the business. And they'd grown up in that with that family business, and the younger brother was very coachable, and he could see the benefit of coaching and see the potential of it, and was willing to change some of his beliefs. But the older brother, who was running the printing side of it, he got very agitated. First of all, his younger brother had to just about physically drag him into the front office to meet with me, and he was like a caged lion, and I explained the coaching and the benefits and so on to it, and he just got angrier and angrier, and in the end, it ended up standing up and shouting at me, "Steve, what don't you understand about business, small business? This is the way small business is. I have to work 70 or 80 hours a week."
Because that's how you do it.
Yeah, that's right. I'll just work. And I think I might have even said to him, "So how are you going to grow the business and achieve better outcomes?" "Work harder. I'm going to work harder."
Yeah. It's it's easy. Yeah, in hindsight, it's easy to laugh at, but at the time, it's
Well,
like,
until you realise that you're laughing at yourself. Yeah.
yes, that's true. So so can you tell us about what your projects are in the future? What projects have you got coming
Projects in the future. Yeah, well, in the coaching realm, we are about to launch a membership group type coaching program. Action Coach have developed that over a number of years now. And that will be helpful for a lot of businesses that are struggling financially and not in a position to pay for the one-on-one coaching. And so that, and the payment plans for, there's several levels of that membership program, but from memory it starts at $200 a week. And so there's a lot of businesses that can manage $200 a week commitment. And of course, to get the results, they also need to be quite driven to move beyond where they currently are. And it's sometimes it's a very incremental sort of situation, and that's one of the things I find with a lot of my clients. The initial goals that they set are really very modest, but for a business that's only doing, say, $200,000 or $300,000 revenue a year, they would think that $200 a week is expensive. But one of the things that I learned from Jim Rohn, who was one of my mentors for many years with all of his business teachings and so on, is that no, there's many things that we think that are too expensive, but that's not really the case. It's just that we can't afford them.
Yeah.
And so when you take that kind of a perspective, I can only make this amount of money in my business. Well, no, hang on a minute. I know a few people that are in the same business as you, and they're making 4 or 5 times as much as what you're making, and they're not working as hard as you're working. So, the first thing is to believe that sort of change is possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's important to know what your competitors are doing as well. And also,
that's true. Yeah. The other projects.
Talk to them also about collaboration as well.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, don't see everybody in your line of business as the enemy. Start to do
I agree.
grow your industry rather than argue about there's not enough for me to get my slice. A couple of the other things though, Scott, we're also about to invite people to participate in some 12-week, what would I call them, 12-week training courses is probably the best description. The first one of those that's coming online is a 12-week management program. That'll be quickly followed by a 12-week sales training course. So, we're really Action Coach, of course, being a global business with over 1,000 franchisees in about 82 different countries. We get a very big multiplication factor for all of these new projects and developments that we're working on, because they get rolled out in all of these countries. And it's quite impressive to see some of the results that are happening. Our global conference is on in not too many weeks away now, and that's a great idea sharing opportunity where a lot of the coaches will be there. And as I said earlier on in the interview, a lot of the things that we learn come from real life rather than in a classroom. So it's interesting to hear how other coaches, oftentimes in other countries, are using particular strategies to good effect, and we can pick it up and test and measure it here.
Yeah, so that brings me to Action Coach, the owner of Action Coach, which is Brad Sugars, and he. Thank you, Stephen. You got me in onto him and his podcast, and also his little tips and tricks that he gives. So, and obviously that filters down into your business as well. And it's a great system that you both use. So, tell us a little bit about what you've learned from Brad.
Wow, Goodness, where do I start? Well, 25 years ago, I had never heard of Brad Sugars. I can't remember ever hearing about him before that. And I quickly learnt about him and actually met him when I was exploring Action before I signed up and bought the franchise. But in those days, Brad did a lot of the training in the franchisee training course, which was 10 days of absolutely full-on training. I mean, I'd had been to lots of courses, I'd read lots of books, I'd been in a whole range of different businesses, but those 10 days absolutely stretched my mind beyond anything that I thought was possible. I think a lot of the things that I've referred to in answering earlier questions are things that I've learnt from Brad. I mean, Brad is an out-and-out entrepreneur, and he's the type of person, and you can think of other people that are like this as well. People either love him or hate him, and but people don't. A lot of people don't realise he's a Brisbane boy, and the last thing that he really wanted to do was to move to the United States. But he really had no option but to do that and relocate his family over there. When Action was, well, we were pretty well advanced. We'd been franchising globally for probably 10 years before Brad decided, well, I've really got to relocate. If I'm going to continue to expand globally. I think in a lot of ways, I've learned a lot of things from him by way of example. A lot of what I shared earlier about idealise, visualise, verbalise, materialise process. That's one of Brad's key things, which of course he's been living out for most of his life. One of the other interesting things that I'd say is I've learnt about the basic simplicity of business. We make business way more complicated than it needs to be.
Very true.
If we can keep it simple enough, we're going to succeed much better.
Yes, you've done very well, mate. We're up to almost the 50-minute mark, so we'll move on to. So tell us about what's your ideal client or ideal. We call it. You call it an avatar?
Yeah, avatar. Yeah. Yeah, we've got a couple of ideal avatars, two in particular, and that relates to two critical points in the growth of most businesses. So in that sense, the first group is businesses that are below $500,000 revenue. Usually they're in about the 350,000 to 500,000 revenue. And because that's a point where most people who go out on their own can get the business to that point. It's like there's a glass ceiling effectively at that point.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, the old glass ceiling situation or syndrome. The other is they will push past that and get to somewhere around 2 million, 2 to 2.5 million. And because they've read a few books, they maybe had a business partner who was complementary to their skills, and they've been more fortunate than some people in being able to employ mostly good people. And so they get to that 2 to 2.5 million point. And there's another glass ceiling there, in my experience. And so that's the other size business. But the one thing in common that is important in both of those cases is the degree to which they're coachable. And so the example I talked about with the printer, that Steve, what don't you understand about small business? I have to work 80 hours a week. Unless that guy had something major happen that forced him to change his beliefs, then he wouldn't have got any value. They could have paid for coaching, but if he maintained that belief, it would have got him nowhere. He would have wasted his money. So the critical thing for both of our main avatars is the business owner is coachable. They agree, yes, I can do better and I want to do better. And that's actually one of the things that I learnt from Jim Rohn. In one of his seminars, he stopped and he said to the business audience, question, if you could do better, should you? And that's an interesting thought. Well, no, I'm doing okay. I don't mind working 30 hours a week, and I'm making $200,000 a year, and we've got the kids in private schools, and I've got my jet ski, and I play golf one day a week that I don't work. But and this brings us to the other very relevant thing, really, is, well, why wouldn't you do better? What are you giving back?
Yes.
And the whole notion of giving back is just so important. In fact, it's really interesting. I was on a webinar last week with an Australian gentleman who, at 26 years of age, was an illiterate bricklayer in Adelaide. And he had an epiphany, a life-changing experience in 1959 at the age of 26. So you can probably work out how old he is now. I think he's in his early 90s. I haven't done the maths. But he realised, actually what happened, he went to a Billy Graham crusade in Adelaide. His wife dragged him along, and he learned that God doesn't create trash. And although he'd been regarded as a dunce all his life, he wasn't, and he was going to do something about it. Well, to cut a long and very interesting story short, he adopted two goals. He wanted to see how much money one person could give away in a lifetime. And the other goal he set himself was to impact the world for 300 years, to start things that were going to impact the world for the next 300 years. And so I think that's a very important point for all of us really, but particularly all of us in business, to spend some time thinking about, okay, well, my first commitment is that I have a family, and so I have to look after my family to the best that I can. But then, how can I contribute beyond that? And it will be different for every person. And it's not just money, because the other thing that I'll leave with people is the definition of money. My definition of money is only energy. We have to use it to power the things that we believe in.
Wow.
What do you believe in?
That's very deep. Very good. Very good, Steve. All right, so I'll go on to the last question. We're running out of time. So what ideas or information would you give to prolong lifelong longevity?
Well, apart from my dad joke answer to that question, that the secret to a long life is to have been born a long time ago, I think
that's a good one.
And always adopt a positive attitude, no matter what, is the key. I think that's the absolute cornerstone. To always look for the positive and adopt a positive attitude, is, I believe, the key to longevity. Because if you have that attitude, you are willing to look at things and do things that lead to maximizing your health.
Yes. So thank you very much, Steve. That was very good. That was very powerful, and I thank you. You're a man of God, and so am I. So I appreciate your time, and we'll get you to put your details in the chats on all 3 platforms, so people can get in contact with you, and they can ask you more questions about your coaching. And also, I just wanted to bring up also, guys, that I'm doing a webinar next Thursday on the 6th of June at 7 p.m. It's called Nutrients for Life. I'm going to talk about nutrients and how they are being diminished in our food system and how we can replace them. And thank you very much for your wise words, Stephen. We appreciate your time, and thank you so much again.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. You have a good evening too.
Appreciate it. You've been watching the Get Busy Livin podcast with Dr. Scott and the wonderful Steve Wanmer.